My husband's phone buzzed while he was showering, and I saw a text from someone named the Queen that said, "Can't wait for this weekend, King." The thing is, my husband Gregory was the most predictable man on the planet, and that's exactly why I married him. He'd worked as an accountant at the same firm for 12 years. He ordered the same turkey club from the same deli every single day at exactly noon, and he took me to the restaurant he proposed at every single anniversary without fail. Date nights were always the same Italian restaurant where he always ordered the chicken parm. Vacations were always the same resort in Cancun, where he always picked the same room on the 3rd floor, and even our arguments were boring because he'd just agree with me to avoid conflict. Gregory was the kind of man who set his alarm for 6:15 every morning, even on weekends, because he said sleeping in made him feel disoriented, and he wore the same rotation of 5 polo shirts to work, because he said it eliminated decision fatigue. His idea of a wild Friday night was staying up past 10 to watch a documentary about bridges, and one time he got genuinely excited because our grocery store rearranged the cereal aisle, and he called it an adventure. He didn't watch sports, he didn't go to bars, and the most spontaneous thing he'd ever done in our entire marriage was order a different flavor of ice cream at the grocery store one time, and then put it back because he said he wasn't sure about it. So when Gregory suddenly started working late every Thursday, and spending entire Saturdays at team building exercises that he could never quite explain in detail, I knew something was wrong immediately, because this man had never deviated from his routine for anything in the entire decade I'd known him. The first thing I noticed was the stains. Gregory would come home on Saturdays with these dark reddish smears on his collar that looked exactly like lipstick, and when I confronted him about it, he got all flustered and stammered out, "Oh, that's just from the trust fall exercises, someone's face hit my shoulder," which didn't even make sense because trust falls don't involve your neck. Then he started doing his own laundry for the first time in our entire marriage, and when I asked why he was suddenly so interested in household chores, he said he was trying to be more helpful around the house, which would have been sweet if it wasn't so obviously suspicious coming from a man who had never once voluntarily touched the washing machine. I found a receipt crumpled up in his jacket pocket for $400 from a place called In the Night, and when I asked him about it, he said it was a work expense for office supplies, and changed the subject so fast I barely had time to process what he'd said. The Thursday nights got worse too because he started coming home later and later, sometimes not until almost midnight, and he always looked exhausted in a way that was different from his normal tired because he'd be flushed and out of breath like he'd been doing something physical. I tried to get him to talk about it one night and sat him down at the kitchen table and asked him directly if there was something going on that he needed to tell me, and he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Honey, I promise you there is nothing to worry about. I am just very committed to being a team player at work." And then he winced when he sat down because his entire back was apparently covered in bruises. Then the scratches started showing up on his arms, long red marks that looked like someone had clawed him. And one Thursday he came home with a massive bruise on his ribs that had already started turning purple. I asked him what happened, and he told me with a completely straight face that he tripped on the rug while he was rushing to the fax machine at work. And I just stared at him because nobody in the year 2024 is rushing to a fax machine for anything. That's when I knew my husband was completely full of it, and whatever he was hiding was something he desperately didn't want me to find out about. I started paying closer attention to everything, and noticed that he'd changed the password on his phone for the first time ever, and when I casually asked him why he said his company required stronger security, which was hilarious coming from a man whose previous password was literally the word password, followed by the number 1. I also noticed he'd been getting packages delivered to the house while I was at work, because I found shipping labels in the recycling bin from companies I'd never heard of with names that sounded like costume shops or prop stores, and when I brought it up he said his coworker was using our address for personal deliveries, which was the weakest lie he'd told yet. One night I